He was worried that the defensive system was so chaotic that if he dove in, the team would be screwed. You're going to notice a lot more stability in the defensive zone. If you isolated a shot, probably top 30 in the sport. It's genuinely elite. I don't see a world where he's anything more than a third line left winger on this team.
What will the Canucks' identity be? All right, so Manny Malhotra is the brand new head coach of the Vancouver Canucks. But what does that actually mean once the puck drops? Edward, over here, has done some incredible research into the systems Malhotra used in Abbotsford. And today I'm going to ask him some questions so he can explain it to a guy like me, whatever that means. I'll also leave a link to his article in the description of the video so you guys can go check that out after we're done. But yeah, Edward, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, so for someone who doesn't know much about hockey systems, I don't really think in that way. How would you explain what Malhotra is asking from the team or asking the team to do?
From an offensive standpoint, Malhotra is asking the team to keep the puck below the dots, because if there's a turnover, he wants the opposition to have to go 180 to 200 feet up the ice. He's basically asking the team offensively to play like a cohesive, heavy cycle game where everything is kind of direct. He also wants, like, if the puck were to get into the neutral zone, he's trying to keep the entries out of the middle. So like where the offside dots are, he wants to try and prevent those. And then defensively, he's asking the team to trust their instincts. They don't need to be necessarily fast on their feet, but they need to be fast with their brains. So here's an example, right? It's a 1-1-3, which means there's one forechecker, one neutral zone, 3 on the blue line. If you just flip it and orient the image so that like you're looking dead on, it's like a T. And the bottom of the T is the lead forechecker. The goal there is to cut off half of the ice. He wants the lead forechecker to force the team to one side of the ice. And then when he's attacking down that side, the second man is going to act as kind of like an anchor so that the puck can't go through and switch sides. That assurance that the puck won't go through allows the board side defender, like the person that's on the puck side of the 3-man line, to just charge and beam at the player that's coming into the zone, which will force either like a pass through the T or a dump in. The guy on the far side of the boards, so on the other side of the T, like of that line of 3, he's going to cut back to go and get the puck on any dump in. So he's going to allow more entries, like the team will, but because of a combination of intelligence and mobility on the back end from a guy like Zeev Buium, from a guy like Willander, from even DPD to a certain extent, Roenick too, it's a combination of like aggressiveness, passivity, and then mobility to get the puck back. Work ethic is going to be a plus in this system, but it's not going to be like, oh, if you don't skate hard every shift, if you don't, you're not going to be dead in the water. It's more about, can you use your speed efficiently as opposed to draining yourself every shift because you need to be able to attack wave after wave. So it's a nice combination of like aggressive hockey, yet still using your intelligence to know when to pull back and be a little bit more passive in order to survive, any potential counterattack.
Okay, awesome explanation. I've already got a few additional questions sprouting from that. First of all, going back to the zone entries, you mentioned that they will be allowing zone entries. Is that going to be putting a lot more pressure on the young D? Not necessarily in a negative way, like necessary pressure, where guys like Zeev Buium and Willander you mentioned are going to be relied on a bit more than they were last year?
Yeah, so there's going to be a lot of reliance on mobility and then making the intelligent read. So the pressure is going to be on, can you make intelligent decisions, as opposed to like, oh, can you get to this spot first? Or like, do I have to bail someone out? It's just, can you kind of like make that read intelligently so that you're preventing anybody on the offense from being able to make a direct beeline right to the crease or right to the slot? You need to be able to protect the guts of the ice. It's just about making that initial read.
What do you think will be the most noticeable difference between Adam Foote's coaching style and Manny Malhotra's?
So even for like the most basic hockey fan, I think what you're going to notice, at least structurally, is the defense, like in zone. How many times last year, if you go and watch old like highlight packages of the Canucks, you'll notice either high danger opportunities or just straight up goals that were the result of like they would have a guy up at the point, like the opponent with the puck. They would shift it to the middle. Two guys would go and, try and get the guy at the point. And then all of a sudden that leaves like the entire far side flank open and they just walk down Main Street and just shoot it right on Lankinen or Tolopilo or whoever. But with Manny Malhotra, he plays that Tocchet zone defense with more room for adjustment. So, for example, I put in my article a play of like where there might be a cycle, which is along the boards when the center or the lowest forward is trying to cover any potential play where the team comes up the boards towards the point. Well, if the guy on the strong side boards comes down and the center goes in the pinch, if their momentums are taking them the separate way, it's not like the center's going to stop, turn on a dime, and then dart back to the middle because that's too choppy and you stop your momentum. Instead, they'll just swing and like exchange with each other. It's not as strict. That's the main difference, I would say, is that you're going to notice a lot more stability in the defensive zone, sticks on the inside lanes to prevent passes from east to west. You're going to notice a lot more shot blocks as a result of that zone defense because they're just going to not be tired from having to chase. So they're going to be able to keep with defenders at the point and block shots and stuff. So you're going to notice a lot more stability.
Sounds good to me. You mentioned work ethic and efficiency. When it comes to, the ideal player that would fit well into Malhotra's system, when you look at the Canucks roster, what names stand out to you?
Different players are going to flourish differently in certain zones. I'll give you a couple. In the offensive zone, I think Linus Karlsson is going to just...
Well, we saw that in Abbotsford, right?
Yeah, and we saw parts of it in Vancouver last year. Like, he was our leading 5v5 point scorer, and I believe he averaged just over 10 minutes a game at 5v5.
He was the most consistent Canuck, I think, all year last year.
He was really the only Canuck who could like take on two guys down low, maintain possession of the puck. Linus Karlsson was just great. He was consistent. I could see Elias Pettersson, the forward, having a good time in the offensive zone. There's a couple indicators that show that like the more he's involved on the forecheck, actually, surprisingly, the better he is at generating points. And last year, just looking at the film back, there were so many times where like he could have joined in on the forecheck, but he wouldn't, and he would play very high up. It almost felt like he was worried that the defensive system was so chaotic that if he dove in, the team would be screwed. So I think if he can get in on the forecheck, especially if like you combine him with and I don't expect this player to put up a lot of points, but like Paul Cotter. Paul Cotter is very fast. He's very physical. He has some of the best forechecking metrics in the league. I think if you put like Linus Karlsson, Elias Pettersson, Paul Cotter, I think that's like a weird line where like you're trying to capitalize on Cotter's forechecking and speed, which will give the Canucks more space up ice because they'll have to respect Cotter, but they're also going to have to respect him because unlike DeBrusk, Cotter will actually throw hits. And then you just let Elias Pettersson and Linus Karlsson work up higher or whatnot. Öhgren should be one that flourishes as well, especially because like I would like to see more physicality out of his game in the neutral zone. If he's that guy on the blue line who has to step up and make that check, he has enough speed where he can close that gap, which will force a team to either make that pass or dump the puck in earlier. So he can either force icings or he can just lay a hit.
Speaking of young guys, someone we haven't really mentioned yet, Jonathan Lekkerimäki. Where do you think he slots in?
Lineup chart wise, it's so weird because I want to see Linus Karlsson get first line ice time, but
I want to see Lekkerimäki with Karlsson and
Pettersson.
If possible. I don't know who would play the off wing there. I guess probably Karlsson.
I would put Lekkerimäki on the off wing.
Oh, maybe for the shot.
Because the one timer and the fact that like when you are a righty on the left or a lefty on the right, your blade is naturally in the middle of the ice, so you take a puck, you rip it faster, right?
Yeah. I take it back. That makes way more sense because his shot is so lethal from anywhere.
Well, and also with Linus Karlsson, like if you rim a puck to him because he's so good along the wall, you want his forehand to be on the side where he's getting the puck from, as opposed to having to reach over on his backhand. So the only thing that's an issue there is that Pettersson or Lekkerimäki would have to show speed that they haven't. Like on a forecheck, you need a good acceleration. Like you can't just be like, slow poke up the ice and eventually you hit top speed. You need someone to be able to get in there on the forecheck. And Linus Karlsson, like as smart as he is and as strong as he is on the wall, it's going to be hard for him to be a lead forechecker. But yeah, like if one of those two, Lekkerimäki or Pettersson, could show some of that top end speed, then yeah, I actually would not mind that at all, because Pettersson could always drive the middle on a rush, offlet it to Lekkerimäki, and Pettersson could drive the defense back, and Lekkerimäki could let his shot go. On a cycle, Lekkerimäki could be the guy, because like I said, it's heavy cycle base, and it's usually like on half side of the ice, there's like an overload. It's like a triangle. You could have Lekkerimäki swing in as the high guy on the triangle. One of the players sets like a pick to create some separation. Karlsson could definitely be that guy. And Lekkerimäki, like I genuinely think his shot, like if you just isolated his shot, probably top 30 in the sport. It's genuinely elite, to the point where like if you gave him first line ice time the whole year and he stayed healthy for 75 games, 25 goals, 20 assists, like I wouldn't mind 45 points out of him. And I know that sounds like a lot, but that shot is just so elite. I do not see a world.
And during a rebuild, I don't even see why that would be such a problem. He'd probably have moments of not looking great defensively, possibly, and all that. But why wouldn't you? Because of DeBrusk? Like, because that would push DeBrusk to the third line? And where does DeBrusk even fit in any of all this?
DeBrusk doesn't fit.
Yeah.
At this point, he does not fit. Like, go through the roster and be like, okay, where does DeBrusk fit? Öhgren feels like he should be on the second line on the left wing.
Yeah, he looked so great with Rossi and Besser at the end of last season that you'd got to give that another chance.
If you're trying to develop Lekkerimäki, you can't just leave him on the third line with power play time, because then that's not utilizing him to his full potential. Because Lekkerimäki's never going to be a guy who could play on line 4. I don't see a world where DeBrusk is anything more than a third line left winger on this team. He could be a second line left winger on other teams, but just with the fact that it's a rebuild and there's more development at play here, DeBrusk is nothing more than like the power play guy at the net front, deflecting in pucks, and getting third line ice time with Ratu and random guy. Like no, I don't think that works.
I'm throwing a lot at you here, but let me also bring up Filip Chytil is another guy that.
Oh my gosh!
When I'm doing the line, every other day I'm in my notes app putting together the lines, and the only mainstay I have is that Rossi line with Besser and Öhgren. The one thing I can never figure out is where I would want Chytil to play, assuming he's healthy. Looking at the centers, it's probably not down the middle, right? I mean, I guess he could play third line center, but I think he's a winger at this point. And then I think would he be good with Petey, right? That's a fun idea. But then all the points you just brought up, like who's going to be that guy on the forecheck? I mean, yeah, where do you have him? How does he fit?
So I'm kind of the same, where I'm like always looking at the roster, and it's like I always feel like I have to create a backup lineup because he's going to get injured, or like he might get injured. And I hate saying that, but I could see a world where it's like Chytil, Pettersson, Lekkerimäki.
Chytil.
Where
so
like
would Chytil be the forechecker in that sense?
You would have to enable Pettersson to be the lead forechecker.
Okay.
Chytil would be the guy who backs up everybody off the rush, and then Pettersson could actually become more of a finisher off the rush from Chytil pushing defenses back. I do think Pettersson would need to be the first guy in on a forecheck, and then Chytil could slide back as the center if Pettersson got beat. So you could have that. Or like, if Lekkerimäki's on their line, then all of a sudden you have Chytil driving, Pettersson driving, and then Lekkerimäki's the third guy high, and then all of a sudden he has the entire high slot to rip pucks. Or Chytil can feed it to Pettersson, tap it over to Lekkerimäki for a one-timer. There's a lot of things you could do there. So, yeah.
Okay, Elias Pettersson, if you were the coach, who would you put with him?
I would say put him with Chytil and Lekkerimäki.
Okay.
But part of that is me assuming that like Malhotra could get into Petey's head a little bit better and get that mental block out of like, dude, your defensive value came from the fact that you would hold on to pucks so long in the offensive zone. By the time another team would get it back, they would have to go for a line change. They would be so tired. Pettersson's defensive value never came from, oh, I'm in the defensive zone 50% of the time and I'm just playing like a Selke defender. That was never the case. It was, I'm in the offensive zone, and when they try to transition back, I'm cutting off passes. He would use like offensive instincts to know where the opponent was going to go, cut those off, right? So you need to give him more offensive zone deployment, and you need to do that with Lekkerimäki too if you're going to get him goals, and you need to do that with Chytil as well if you're going to protect him from having to go through the neutral zone and potentially get hit off the rush and stuff. So I would put him with Chytil and Lekkerimäki. Here's an analytic that people might not know. On a per shot basis, Elias Pettersson was second on the team, like for expected goals. So while he did not shoot a lot, it's because he's always been a guy who relies on efficiency. If there's anything less than like a B grade chance, he's reloading the puck looking for something else. He's not a guy who's just going to be like, oh, I'm standing here still. It's a 3-on-2. I'm just going to throw a shot on. He's never been that guy. It's always like high danger chances. So he needs a guy who can get him the puck in high danger areas. If he were to play with Chytil and Lekkerimäki, I could see a world where he's like 25 goals next year. I'm not saying like, 102 point Pettersson's back. No. But
that's what I heard.
That's what some people will hear.
Are you putting Lekkerimäki on the left side with and then Chytil on the right?
I think if you put Chytil on the right side, it's going like, how do I put this in a nice way? I think he'll be too anxious to cut to the middle with the puck a lot, and that's where he's going to get hit.
So in that combination, you're putting Lek over on his normal side.
So yeah, I'm going to try and visualize a play in your head here, and I'm trying to do it for the audience. So Chytil's on the left side. He takes a pass from Buium, and he's streaking up the left side wall. Instead of cutting to the net with the puck, he continues to skate down below the goal line and goes around the net. Pettersson drives the left post, backing up the defense. Chytil will have drawn a defender on his side around the net with him. As the defenseman gets drawn up, Lekkerimäki goes from the right wing to the middle. Chytil feeds him the pass from the right boards on the goal line because he's wrapped around the net, up diagonally to the high slot, and Lekkerimäki rips it.
That's beautiful. Okay, my final question. If Manny Malhotra has everything working the way he wants it to, it's a well-oiled machine and everybody's doing exactly what he asks of them, what will the Canucks' identity be? What will they look like?
Heavy possession team, a team that will surrender a lot of quantity, not a lot of quality. But here's the caveat, because not everything is perfect, he's expecting mistakes, right? These are young players. So even in a world where everything's good, there's still going to be mistakes, and those mistakes are going to lead to high danger chances that will end up in the back of their net. But you can't look at them as failures. You have to reframe them as learning experiences that will be used for successes later on.
Perfect. That's what I like to hear.
Yeah.
Sounds like he's the right choice for coach. I mean, I'm getting the gist that you agree. You like this hiring.
Yeah, and here's the part that I really like is that he's, by all accounts, he's an analytical guy who is able to translate that to players who might not be fond of analytics. Like, oh, here's your zone entry percentile. They don't understand that. But if I said, hey, every 8 times you enter the zone, you're dumping it in 6 times, they would kind of understand that more. I'm not saying like dumb it down, but you're trying to put in more hockey lingo, right? He's able to take analytics and frame them in a way where like even a non-analytic player will look at it and be like, oh yes, this is a guy that knows what he's talking about. He's played that grit game, defensive game. I'm going to listen to him. Numbers are great, analytics are great, but you have to put them in context. Manny Malhotra can give them that context, and therefore they'll accept it and then play that way, and then that's where you'll see the improvement.
Hell yeah, man. Well, thank you so much for doing this. Really, really appreciate it.
Always fun being here.